Hello guys, this is me Zishan Hassan as a tutor of Audit Assurance, previously known as F8. So in this video, I will discuss about the March 2020 exam. Uh, it's in my opinion and as well as examiner opinions, right? So first of all, let us look at the general comments made by the examiner. The audit and assurance exam is offered in computer based CBE format, and the model of delivery for the CBE exams means that candidates do not always receive the same set of questions. Um, Section A objective test questions. Here we look at the key challenge areas for this section in the exam. Whereas section B constructed response questions, here they provide commentary around some of the main themes that have affected candidates' performance in March 2020 session, right? For example, identifying common knowledge gaps and offering guidance on where exam technique could be improved, including the key use of the CBE functionality in answering those questions. Right, so let us talk about the in particular the section A. It was examiner saying it was pleasing to see that once again almost mostly candidates attempted all 15 questions across the three OT cases. Candidates prepared for the future sessions are advised. Preparing for the future sessions are advised to work through the past exams which are available and to carefully review how each of the correct answers uh, were were derived. So, Section A in March 2020 provide a broad coverage of the syllabus, and future candidates should aim to revise all areas of AA syllabus rather than attempting to question spot. In March 20 examination including but was not limited to those areas including professional ethics, ACCA Code of Ethics and Conduct, substantive procedures including payables and inventory, um, audit finalization and review auditor reports. So let us look at the some of the sample questions for discussion, right? So for example, for example, let me consider a question. One of the questions which you guys received in March 2020 exam, and the question was, which two of the following statements should be included in a representation letter? I repeat the question for you guys. Which two of the following statements should be included in a written representation letter? All transactions have been recorded in the accounting records and reflected in the financial statements. A. B. Due to inherent limitations of audit, there is a risk that some material misstatements will not be detected. C. Professional judgment and skepticism have been exercised throughout the course of the audit. Significant accounting assumptions used in making accounting estimates are reasonable. So the answer for this part of the question is, you know, is the last option which I told you, that is the D part. Uh, Significant accounting assumptions used in making accounting estimates are reasonable. You know, in this question, examines knowledge of this question. Examines the knowledge of ISA 580 written representation. ISA requires auditors to request number of written representations in relation to management responsibilities, and these include the statement at A. So A is also the right answer, which is the all transactions have been recording uh, accounting records and are reflected in the financial statements. And there are also a number of other ISAs which require subject matter specific written representations. Include requirements is ISA 540 auditing accounting estimates, including fair value accounting estimates, relating disclosures for written representations, which also set out in D, as I told you. So This question particularly demonstrate the need for candidates to think carefully and not to rush to a conclusion to avoid falling for the distractors. For example, the statement at the second statement, the B, would be included in the letter of engagement and see in the auditor's report, right? Let me discuss another example with you. The example 2 question. Listen to me carefully, folks. Listen to me very carefully. It is 1st July 2005 and you are an audit manager at X and Co, currently finalizing the audit of Y company for the year ended 31st March 2005, and you are performing the final review in preparation for the signing the auditor's report. During the year, one of the company's properties was revalued by an independent expert valuer. Now the question is, which two of the following are audit procedures X and company should perform in conducting its overall review of the financial statements of Y company? A. Make an assessment of Y company's ability to continue as going concern. B. Design and perform analytical procedures to confirm the financial statements are consistent with the auditor's understanding of the entity. C. Undertake money laundering identification procedures to reconfirm the identity of the directors of Y company. D. Assess the information obtained from the external expert in respect of the property revaluation. And E. Obtain and retain documentation to confirm the legal title of all non-current assets. And F. Reassess materiality to confirm whether it remains appropriate in the context of Y company's final financial statements. Here the correct answers are B and F. Why so? Because ISA 520 analytical procedures requires auditors to perform analytical procedures near the end of the audit to assist the auditor when performing an overall conclusion. ISA 320 in planning and performing an audit states that materiality may need to be revised as the audit progresses. At the review stage of the auditor considers whether the aggregate of uncorrected misstatements is material. In doing so, the auditor must consider whether the materiality level is still appropriate. This question is a reminder to candidates not to overlook the financial and review stage of the audit. It is an essential part of the audit process and candidates must be prepared for questions on this. It is also demonstrate the importance of understanding the process of the audit overall and the procedures that are performed at each stage. For example, the procedures at C, D and E are all valid audit procedures, but C is performed as part of the work on acceptance of a client, and D and E are performed as part of the field work. Okay, and A is not valid as it is management that would make an assessment of the company's ability to continue as going concern. The auditor is required to gather sufficient and appropriate evidence that management assessment and use of the going concern basis is appropriate. So far so good. I hope you got it. This is the discussion of the section A so far. Now let us discuss about the section B. The section B, which is a constructed response question, tested candidates understanding of the audit assurance syllabus obviously, and they examined audit framework and regulation, planning and risk assessment, internal control, audit evidence, review and reporting. In audit framework and regulation, what they ask. So, a question in this area may present candidates with a scenario based with ethics or corporate governance question. Candidates generally ask to identify and explain the set of number of issues from a given scenario and give relevant recommendation to address the issues identified. Candidates awarded zero point 0.5 marks for identifying the ethical threat, corporate governance deficiency, and explaining the implication of the threat deficiency. Candidates awarded 1 mark for each well explained recommendation. Candidates do not explain the implication of the threat deficiency, simply stating corporate governance deficiencies against the rules would not be awarded credit. Okay, candidates must explain the implication of the deficiency. For example, there needs to be an appropriate balance in the board for correct decisions to be made, avoid to be biased. In addition, when making recommendations for ethics and corporate governance questions, candidates reminded that the recommendation must be an action. Often candidates provide objectives rather than actions. For example, in March 20 sessions, a recommendation that the board must be balanced was not awarded credit. Candidates must give clear action. For example, X company needs to recruit 2 non-executive directors. Let us discuss the sample question, which is Frisia company from the sample March June 2019 question is a good scenario based question to attempt on corporate governance. Hurling Co from the sample June 17 question is a good scenario based question to practice the skill of explaining ethical issues and making relevant recommendations. Okay. Then let us jump to the planning and risk assessment. Um, Questions on assessing audit risk tend to be scenario based. Obviously, the candidates have to identify and explain the risk from a scenario and give an auditor's response to address those risks. Other questions in this area of the syllabus tend to be more knowledge based questions and hence depend on the ability to students to recall their knowledge in the exam. So 16%, 12 to 16 marks are application based, and other marks like 4 to 8 marks are knowledge based question in this area. So as examiner also said that, as noted in previous examiners report, a fundamental factor in planning and assessing the risk of an audit of entity is an assessment of audit risk, and this remains a highly examined area. It's not 3 to 4 sessions, but I've been teaching this paper from I guess more than 8 years now, and since then, a question on audit risk and planning is a mandatory one, right? So audit risk questions typically, as I told you, audit risk questions typically require a number of audit risks to be identified. 0.5 marks each explained, 0.5 mark each, and auditors respond to each risk 1 mark each. Typically, candidates can be required to identify and explain the region of 6 to 8 risk and responses, and this is a practice of examiner. So um, the scenarios usually contain more issues than are required to be discussed. Well, yeah, obviously each and every line, if you read them carefully, they will be telling you a lot of risk. If you read them carefully, um, if 6 risks are required, you can get easily 8 to 9 risks. If 8 risks are required, you can get 9 to 10 risks easily if you read them carefully, right? So there may be risk factors at the beginning of scenario, in the opening paragraph, and also in the closing paragraph. And as noted in previous sessions, the examiner is saying that candidates often miss these. However, this session it was pleasing. In March 20, that many candidates identified that the company was a new audit client, and new audit client is always a risk factor, audit risk factor for the auditors, right? Um, Also, examiners stressed in previous exam sessions, yet again, a number of candidates did not explain how each issue could impact on the audit risk, and this is the main reason that why you guys are failing, therefore not awarded second point 5 mark. To explain audit risk, candidates must need to state the specific area of the financial statements impacted with an assertion, example, cutoff, valuation, or reference to under or over misstated, or reference to inherent control or detection risk. Um, Misstated was only awarded if it was clear that the balance could be either over or understated. Um, Number of candidates stated the risk was under over when it was clearly one or the other and were not awarded credit for this. Uh, Example for this is a peony company from the sample March or June 19 questions where inventory records showed higher levels of inventory than physical counts. In this instance, the risk was one of over statement. Candidates who stated the inventory could be misstated would not have been awarded credit. Scattergun approach is not recommended over here. Candidates must need to state the specific area of the financial statements impacted as opposed to a general statement. For example, following on from the inventory risk above, no credit was rewarded for candidates stating therefore current assets could be overstated. An appropriate explanation in this instance would be inventory could be overstated. An auditor's response does not have to be detailed procedure. Rather than approach, the audit team will take to address the identified risk. However, in common with previous exam sessions, auditor responses were sometimes too weak. For example, discuss with management or just noted the correct accounting treatment. In addition, it was noted that some candidate focused on what managed should be rather than the auditor and or give response that were inappropriate to the scenario. For example, in this session of March 20, a scenario noted that there was no credit controller. Some candidates recommended as a response management should hire a new credit controller. This is not an appropriate auditor response and would have gained no marks over here. Listen to this carefully, guys. Let me give you another reference. Harlem Company from the sample September or December 19 questions, and Pionico from the sample March June 19 questions are both good scenario based question on audit risk and response to practice. Audit risk and response questions can also be linked with the knowledge questions. Good examples of these are BlackBerry Company from March 2018 questions and Cupid and Co from the sample September December 2017. It is being noticeable in recent sessions that candidates have not performed well in this knowledge questions, and this should be straightforward marks to obtain. So what are you guys doing? And then you are saying that I'm tired of this audit and assurance paper. I don't know what's going wrong with it. See, these are the small silly mistakes. So performing in knowledge questions was again disappointing. Candidates often did not read the requirements carefully. One of the main reason of your failure that you are not reading the requirements carefully. Right? Many candidates just listed the contents of the document rather than explaining why it was important. So in future, whenever you will be planning to reappear in the exam, you are reminded that the must revise all areas of the syllabus, spend adequate time learning knowledge areas in preparation for the exam, and read the questions requirements very carefully. And one additional thing from my side: practice, practice, practice. Understand the requirement, right? Practice will make you perfect. Not just auditing the past papers will help you to pass the exams, right? Clear your concepts. Then let us discuss about the internal control area. Um, Internal questions typically Require internal control deficiencies to be identified, zero point 0.5 mark each, explained 0.5 mark each, a relevant recommendation to address the control deficiency, 1 mark, and often a test of control that external auditor would perform to assess whether each of these controls, if implemented, is operating correctly, 1 mark. Internal questions can also include the identification, 0.5 marks each, and explanation, 0.5 marks each, key controls as well as a test of controls, 1 mark, versus whether the key controls are operating effectively or not. So further answers may be required to be presented in the form of report to management, in which case a covering letter, 2 marks, is required. Internal control questions often include knowledge requirement in common with planning and risk questions. These are relatively straightforward marks, and candidates should be attempting to score maximum marks in this session, in the March 20 session. Performance in this requirement was, as in December 19, disappointing. Many candidates did not attempt the question or did not address the question specifically. It is imperative and that the future candidates ensure that they devote adequate time to learning the knowledge areas of the syllabus as well as practicing this style of question. Good example to practice are Amberjack company from the sample September December 19 questions, Frisia company from the sample March June 19 questions, Raspberry company from the sample March June 18 questions, and the Comet company from the sample September December 17 questions. So internal controls questions may require a highly examinable area in performance in March 20 was mixed. The scenario included in the exam questions contain more issues than are required to be discussed and were generally able to identify the required number of points from the scenarios. However, number of answers identified irrelevant key controls defects deficiencies. For example, some candidates noted that perpetual inventory counts were undertaking, explaining, for example, some candidates that this is a deficiency as full inventory count should take place at the year end. No credit was given for that. Uh, Perpetual inventory counts are not an internal control deficiency because, if carried out correctly, this shows a misunderstanding of the validity of the perpetual inventory counts, and disappointing, very disappointing. This has also been tested widely in previous sessions as well. So guys, perpetual inventory is normal part of the management conducted, and it's not a deficiency, it's a good thing. So again, if you are one of them, it's a conceptual error by your side, and obviously this is one of the reasons you're failing the paper. Also, some candidates confuse key controls with deficiencies. In order to be a key control, candidates need to consider whether controls are described has been appropriately designed, would in fact, if operating effectively, prevent or detect material misstatement. For example, in March, a question noted that there was an internal audit department, but it was understaffed. The fact that there is an internal audit department in this circumstances is not a control, as the lack of staff mean it was not operating effectively. So in this instance, the correct conclusion would be that the undertake staffing of the internal audit department resulted in a control deficiency. This increase in irrelevant points seems to stem from a lack of understanding of the scenario and due to lack of question practice. See, I proved my point. This is the main reasons that we are failing the exams, right? So as far as the audit evidence area is concerned, a key requirement for this part of the syllabus is an ability to describe relevant audit procedures for a particular class of transactions or events. In March 20 session, it contains a number of questions in this syllabus section covering a variety of across both the statement of profit loss, statement of financial position. Illustrating candidate must be prepared to tailor their knowledge, substantive testing to any area of the financial statement. In most cases, candidates remain unable to tailor their knowledge of general substantive procedures to the specific issues in the question requirements, with providing test of controls rather than substantive procedures. So this is the another mistake you guys make Instead of giving substantive procedures, you give test of controls. You mix things, and obviously, if examiner asks you substantive procedures and you will give a test of control, that will give you this, no credit for that, right? So this is another reason, and this happens due to lack of practice. um, I hope you get the enough reasons that you guys, why if you are among the failures, unable to pass the audit assurance, that why you are failing it. um, for further help, you can contact me on my WhatsApp, uh, plus 923323005199, or directly you can contact me on my uh, Facebook page as well, right? So follow the link, like the page, uh, follow the page, and click on the notifications so you get the regular uh, updates about my notifications, about my videos and notes, etc. See you soon, folks, with more stuff for you to help you out, and also you can contact me for the online classes which will help you a lot to pass this exam. Bye bye.